Clara pulled back the bedroom curtain and looked at the São Paulo sky that Thursday afternoon. The gray of the clouds was the same shade as the concrete of the buildings, and she thought, without telling anyone, that the whole world seemed made of the same stuff as her life, colorless, without brightness, without promise. The alarm clock on the nightstand showed 4:20 p.m. In 3 hours, she would have to be sitting across from a stranger in a restaurant she hadn't even chosen, pretending that this was a good idea. The meeting had been arranged by Beatrice, her only true friend at work, a woman who fervently believed that no one should eat alone more than 3 times a week. Clara ate alone every night, sometimes standing in the kitchen, other times sitting on the living room floor with her plate on the coffee table she had found abandoned on the sidewalk 2 years ago. Beatrice knew this, and that's why she insisted. "You're going to love him," she'd said with that smile that always preceded a kind lie. "He's a friend of my cousin, educated, handsome, works in investments. You know, a really nice guy." Clara didn't answer right away. She stared at the computer screen in her office. The numbers on the spreadsheet jumbled together as if they were letters from another language. She worked in the administrative department of a transport company in the East Zone. Her days were filled with invoices, customer complaints, and coffee reheated 3 times in the same pot. No one ever asked how she was. And when someone did ask, she would say, "Fine," because she knew the question didn't want an answer. It only wanted the relief of having been asked. He accepted the meeting the same day his mother called asking for money. Dona Irene lived in the interior of Minas Gerais, in a place that barely made ends meet, and she always called with the same weak voice, as if each call were her last. It wasn't, but Clara sent the money anyway. She transferred half her salary every month, lived on the rest, and the rest was never enough. She bought clothes at thrift stores, cut her own hair at the barbershop. I used to look in the bathroom mirror, and for 3 years, I hadn't gone into a pharmacy without mentally calculating whether I could afford what I needed. She accepted the meeting because she was tired, not of work, of the silence. Now, standing before the open wardrobe, she looked at the options with the same expression as someone gazing at an expensive shop window. Everything there seemed made for someone else. She was wearing faded jeans that were already too comfortable to be pretty. A navy blue knit top that had once been black, but time had done what it does to everything she owned. She was wearing a dress, a single dress that she had kept since her high school graduation, wrapped in plastic inside a box at the back of the closet. She didn't open the box. She didn't even think about it. She put on her pants, her shirt, a pair of white sneakers that had once been genuinely white, and applied a pink lipstick she found in her purse, probably forgotten there by Beatrice during some hurried lunch. She looked at herself in the mirror. She didn't think she was ugly. She didn't think she was beautiful either. If you thought exactly what you were, a 32-year-old woman who had learned not to expect anything from her reflection. He left the apartment without locking the door the first time. He went back. He locked it. He went down the 3 flights of stairs. The elevator had been broken for months, and the building manager kept saying the repairs would come next week, with the same conviction with which he promised anything he never delivered. The building was old, cramped, with a musty smell on the walls and a narrow hallway where neighbors left shoes, bicycles, and cardboard boxes, as if it were an extension of their lives that didn't fit inside their homes. Clara walked to the bus stop. She waited 20 minutes. She boarded the crowded bus and stood holding onto the metal bar as the bus rattled along the potholed streets. Beside her, a woman with a child in her arms struggled to keep her balance. Clara held the woman's arm for a moment without saying anything, just to keep her from falling. The woman looked at Clara and smiled. It was the only smile Clara received that day. The restaurant was in Jardins. Beatrice had chosen the place, of course. "It's nothing extravagant," she'd said. "It's just a cute Japanese place." The cute Japanese place had a tinted glass facade, low lighting, a valet at the door, and a menu that probably cost more than Clara spent at the market in a week. She stopped on the sidewalk and looked inside. She felt her stomach clench. Not from hunger, from inadequacy. He went in. The host looked her up and down with that trained gaze that says nothing but communicates everything. Clara felt the weight of the faded blouse, the worn sneakers, the borrowed lipstick. "You said the name of the reservation." The young man checked, nodded, and led her to a table at the back near the window. The table was set for 2. Clara sat on the side that faced away from the rest of the room, so she wouldn't have to see the others looking at her. He hadn't arrived yet. He ordered water. Then he looked at the menu and calculated. He calculated as he always did because, for Clara, everything in life was a calculation that needed to balance. She chose the cheapest dish she could find, a simple temaki, and decided that if he ordered dessert, she would say she was satisfied. It was a lie, but she was good at little lies. She had learned that early. As a child, she would say she had already eaten lunch when she came home from school without having eaten anything, because she didn't want her mother to feel guilty for not having anything to put on the table. 10 minutes passed. 15, 20. Clara looked at her wristwatch, an old Casio that had belonged to her father, the only thing of his that she possessed. Her father had left when she was 8 years old. He didn't die. He just left. Without a letter, without warning, without a reason that an 8-year-old could understand. Donna Irene said, he said he had gone to work in another state. Then he said he had another family. Then he stopped saying anything. The watch stayed. And Clara never took it off her wrist, as if keeping the hands ticking was a silent way of keeping her father close, even knowing he was never there. 25 minutes. She was already about to get up. She had mentally rehearsed her exit, paying the bill for the water, thanking them, walking quickly to the door, not looking at anyone. She had done this before, not with dates, but with life. Every time something didn't go as it should, Clara had a way out. It was a particular kind of retreat. She didn't complain. She didn't cry. She simply folded her disappointment carefully, like someone folding a letter they're not going to send, and kept it in a place where no one could see it. That's when the door opened and a man rushed in. He was wearing dark trousers, a white linen shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows, and a watch that, even from a distance, looked like it cost more than Clara's entire apartment. But what she noticed first wasn't the watch. It was the way he entered, almost stumbling over his own steps, his hair slightly disheveled, and an expression on his face that mixed haste with something akin to embarrassment. He didn't enter like someone who thought he was important. He entered like someone who knew he had made a mistake. The hostess pointed to Clara's table. The man walked over, pulled out a chair, and sat down with a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of an entire day. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm really sorry. I know I'm late. I had a problem on the way and—" "Okay," Clara said. She said it quickly, as she always did when she wanted to end a disagreement. It wasn't okay, but she had already decided that she would stay another 5 minutes out of politeness and then leave. He extended his hand. "Raphael." "Clara." She squeezed his hand. She felt his warm skin. He had large, firm hands, but the squeeze was soft, almost delicate. Raphael looked at her for a moment, not as the hostess had looked at her, not from head to toe, not evaluating. He looked as one looks at a person for the first time and tries to understand who is there before making any judgment. "Have you ordered anything yet?" he asked. "Only water." "Great, then we'll choose together." He opened the menu and began reading the names of the dishes aloud as if he were reading the menu of a corner diner, without ceremony, without pretense. "I don't even know how to pronounce this one," he said, pointing to a particular sashimi. Then he laughed. And his laugh was one of those laughs that don't ask permission. They come out on their own, fill the space, and for a second make the world seem lighter. Clara didn't laugh, but she didn't pretend either. She just looked at him with an expression that was almost curiosity, almost defensiveness, almost nothing. Raphael noticed. "You didn't want to be here, did you?" he said, without accusation, as if stating the obvious and respecting it. Clara hesitated. Then she said, "I don't know. I'm still deciding." He smiled. Not a smile of conquest. A smile of someone who understands. "Fair enough. Will you even give me dessert to convince you?" She almost smiled. Almost. And that almost was the first crack in the wall that Clara had carried since she could remember. Dinner began slowly, as things that aren't forced usually do. Raphael ordered for both of them without asking the price, but also without ostentation. He asked her if she liked salmon, if she was allergic to anything, if she preferred juice or tea. Small questions that together formed something Clara hadn't received in a long time, attention. He spoke vaguely about his day, as if choosing what to talk about. He said he worked in business, without going into details. He said he lived alone, that he had a dog named Brass because he had adopted the animal in Muka, that he didn't know how to cook anything other than scrambled eggs, and that sometimes he ate cereal on the sofa while watching a documentary about the ocean. Clara listened attentively to everything, not because it was fascinating, but because there was something about the way he spoke, without haste, without needing to impress, that made her want to keep listening. It was like a song that isn't spectacular, but whose station you don't change. When he asked about her, Clara gave her usual short answers. She worked in administration. She lived in the East Zone. She liked to read when she had time. She didn't have any pets or plants because everything she tried to take care of seemed to die somehow. "Everything dies," Raphael said, without weight. "But we keep taking care of it." The sentence hung between them like smoke from a burnt-out candle. Clara felt something move inside her chest, a shift so small that no one could see it from the outside. But she felt it. Dinner continued. She ate more than she had planned. He ordered dessert without asking if she wanted any, and when the matcha ice cream arrived, he placed a spoonful in front of her, as if it were the most natural thing in the world to share dessert with a stranger. Clara tasted it, and for the first time in a long time she tasted something that wasn't something she had to give. As they were leaving, Raphael offered Clara a ride. She refused. He didn't insist. But he walked with her to the bus stop and stood there beside her, in silence, looking out at the street as if they were expecting the same thing. "It was nice to meet you, Clara," he said when the bus arrived. She got on. She sat by the window. And when the bus started moving, she looked back and saw that Raphael was still there, standing at the bus stop, with his hands in his pockets and his eyes fixed on the bus that was taking away the woman in the faded blouse and worn-out sneakers who, for some reason he didn't even understand yet, he couldn't stop thinking about. Clara arrived home and did what she did every night. She took off her shoes, washed her face, and heated the water for coffee. But that night, as she held the mug with both hands, sitting on the living room floor, she thought about Raphael's laughter, about the way he had looked at her without haste, about his words about continuing to care. She thought that perhaps, just perhaps, there were people in the world who looked at others without searching for flaws. She didn't fall asleep quickly that night. She lay staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the building, the dripping tap in the upstairs neighbor's house, the soft whimpering of the dog in the next apartment, the engine of the bus on the avenue below. Sounds she knew by heart, sounds that had never kept her company before. But that night, for some reason, the silence between them seemed less empty. The next day, Beatrice appeared at her desk in the office with the smile of someone who already knows the answer. So, how did it go? Clara looked at the computer screen. It was normal. Good normal or bad normal? Normal. Beatrice sat on the edge of the table. He texted my cousin saying he liked you. Clara didn't answer, but the typing fingers paused for half a second, and half a second, for anyone who knew Clara, was a long time. He wants to see you again, Beatrice said. Can I give him your number? Clara took a deep breath. Every time life offered her something, she expected a price to pay. Because there was always a price to pay. As a child, she received a new pair of shoes from her neighbor, and her mother insisted on returning them, saying she didn't accept charity. As a teenager, a teacher praised her essay in front of the class, and the following week, her classmates started calling her the intellectual from the favela. As an adult, the only boyfriend she ever had, a young man named Vinicius, who worked in a mechanic's shop, left her after 2 years, saying she was too good but boring. Too good but boring. The phrase was tattooed on her like a burn scar. Clara never knew what it meant to be boring to someone. Did it mean I didn't laugh loud enough? That I didn't wear nice clothes? That I didn't know how to fake enthusiasm? Or did it simply mean that to be loved, it wasn't enough to be good? It was necessary to be something else, something she couldn't name and therefore didn't know how to offer. You can go in, Clara said. And the two words came out like someone opening a door without knowing what's on the other side. Raphael texted her that same night. It wasn't anything elaborate. Hi, Clara. It's Raphael, from dinner, from the Japanese restaurant, from being late, from all that. She read it 3 times. She replied with a hi, followed by a period that made her seem more serious than she was. He sent a photo of the dog, Brass, lying on his back on the sofa. And she, without thinking, replied with a heart emoji. Then he stared at the emoji for 5 minutes as if he had made an irreversible mistake. The messages continued in the following days. Raphael wrote as he spoke, without haste, without needing to fill silences, but present. He would send messages in the morning asking if she had slept well. He would send photos of Brass in absurd positions. He would talk about boring meetings without saying exactly what he did in those meetings. And always, at the end of the day, he would send a single sentence, "Good night, Clara," without a question mark, without any apparent ulterior motive. Just her name, preceded by a simple wish. Clara read each message as one might read a note found inside an old book, carefully, suspiciously, with a secret hope that it were true. On their second date, he took her to a street fair in Villa Maddalena. No expensive restaurants, no glass facades. They walked among craft stalls, ate cheese pastries standing up, and shared a bottle of sugarcane juice. Raphael wore a simple t-shirt, shorts, and flip-flops. Clara wore her usual jeans and a blouse she had washed 3 times that week because it was the only one without stains. He bought a necklace of colorful beads from a woman selling handicrafts on a towel spread on the ground. The necklace cost 8 rays. He gave it to Clara as if it were a rare jewel. "This color suits you," he said, pointing to a blue bead in the middle of the string. Clara held the necklace in her hand and felt the almost non-existent weight of those beads. It was nothing, and that was everything. Because no one, in her 32 years of life, had ever given her something simply because the color suited her. She placed the necklace around her neck, and it stayed there, close to her chest, like a promise made in a voice so low that only her body could hear it. The third meeting was in a bookstore. Raphael discovered that she liked to read and showed up with a list of books he wanted to recommend, handwritten on a piece of graph paper torn from a notebook. Clara looked at the list. He looked at the crooked handwriting, and he felt that that piece of paper was worth more than any gift wrapped in ribbon. They wandered between the shelves for almost 2 hours. He read passages aloud. She listened. Sometimes she commented. Sometimes she just smiled. And Clara's smile, when it came, had a rare quality. It was a smile that he didn't offer himself to just anyone. He had to be earned. And Raphael, without knowing it, was the one earning his respect. But Clara's life wasn't just made up of dates and goodnight messages. It was made up of waking up at 5 in the morning, taking 2 buses, working 9 hours a day, coming home in the dark, paying bills, sending money to her mother, eating rice and eggs, sleeping and repeating. Between one date and another, there was the weight of an existence that couldn't fit into text messages. And she knew like someone who knows that winter comes after autumn, that at any moment Raphael would discover who she really was. Not the version from the date, not the version that smiles in the bookstore, but the whole version. The woman who counts coins at the bakery. The woman who washes clothes in the tub because the washing machine broke 6 months ago. The woman who doesn't have health insurance, doesn't have a car, doesn't have anything to protect her from anything. And then he would discover that she was too good, but boring. Again. It was during the 4th meeting that the first fracture appeared. Raphael invited her to dinner at his house. Clara accepted before understanding what that meant. When he sent the address, she typed it into her phone's map and saw the location appear in a neighborhood she only knew from television. Alto de Pinheiros. The street was tree-lined, silent, with houses that seemed to hide entire worlds behind their high walls. His car, which she had never seen because on all their dates he had gone on foot or by taxi, was in the garage. A car whose make she couldn't identify, but which shone as if it had never been touched by the same city where she lived. The house was enormous. Not enormous like in the movies, not grotesquely enormous, but spacious in a way that seemed impossible for one person alone. It had an indoor garden with a tree growing in the middle of a wooden deck, a kitchen that looked like it came straight out of a magazine, a living room with a floor-to-ceiling bookcase, and in the center, a sofa where Bras slept with his tongue hanging out. Clara stepped inside and felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. Not because of the beauty, not because of the luxury, but because of the distance. The distance between that house and her 40-square-meter apartment, smelling of dampness, was the same distance between 2 planets. And she, standing there in the entrance, in worn sneakers and a thrift store blouse, felt with painful clarity that she didn't belong there. Raphael noticed, not because she said anything, but because her body changed, her shoulders hunched, her hands clenched. Her gaze, which had begun to open up in their last few meetings, closed again like a flower feeling the cold. "Come," he said, in a voice that held nothing grand about it. "Come see Bras. He's been waiting for visitors all day." The dog ran to Clara and jumped on her with such disproportionate joy that it seemed absurd. She bent down, petted the animal, and as she did so, felt her eyes burn. She didn't cry. Clara didn't cry in front of others, but something inside her, something that was kept in that place where she folded her disappointments, began to stir. Dinner was simple. Raphael cooked scrambled eggs, as he had promised was his only skill, and served them with toast and orange juice. He placed the plates on a rustic wooden table in the garden, under the light of a lamp hanging from a tree branch, and they ate there, with Bras lying at Clara's feet, as if it were the most ordinary thing in the world. But it wasn't. And Clara knew it wasn't. "Raphael," she said, after a long silence, "what exactly do you do?" He looked at her. He put his fork down on his plate, and for the first time since they met, he seemed uncomfortable. "I own a company, a technology company. We develop software for the financial sector." Clara nodded slowly. "Big?" He took a deep breath. "Yes, it's big." "How big?" Another silence. Bras yawned. The wind rustled the leaves of the tree. "The company is worth quite a lot," said Raphael. People use a word I don't particularly like, but I have a lot of money, Clara." She already knew. Of course she already knew. The house, the car, the watch, the neighborhood. But hearing it from him, looking into his eyes, sitting at the table with scrambled eggs and orange juice, was different. It was like hearing a sentence. Because his money wasn't just money. It was a wall that separated his world from hers, with the same efficiency with which it separated the city's neighborhoods. "Why didn't you tell me before?" Clara asked, not angrily, exhausted. "Because every time I tell them, people change their minds." "How do they change?" "They start acting differently. They start laughing louder. They start agreeing with everything. They start wanting things I can give them instead of things I am. And I wanted you to know me without all that." Claire remained silent for a long time, long enough for the shadows of the leaves to shift on the deck, long enough for Bras to change position twice, long enough for Raphael to begin to think that he had lost something he didn't even know he had. "I understand," she said finally. "But you need to understand something else, too." "What?" "I don't change when people have money. I change when I discover that their world is too different from mine. Because I know how that ends." "How does it end?" "It ends with someone realizing that the distance is too great. And usually, the one who realizes it first is the one who has the most to lose. And the one who has the most to lose, Raphael, is never me. Because I never have anything to lose." The phrase hung in the air like a confession. And Raphael heard not only the words, but everything that lay behind them. The years of absence, the years of calculation, years of doors that closed before she could enter. "Clara," he said. And the way he said her name, slowly as if pronouncing something fragile, made something inside her tremble. "I don't want you to think about distance. I want you to think about what you felt when we ate pastel at the fair, when we walked through the bookstore, when Brass jumped on you just now. That's real. The rest is just numbers." She wanted to believe. God, how she wanted to believe. But life had taught Clara that believing was the first step towards falling. And she had already fallen too many times. She returned home that night to a different kind of silence. Not the usual silence, the one made of absence. It was a full silence, full of fear, full of desire, full of a question she didn't know the answer to. Was it possible to be loved without becoming vulnerable? The following days were strange. Clara continued working, continued taking the bus, continued sending money to her mother, but now there was a crack in the routine. And through that crack came a light that she couldn't tell if it was sun or fire. Raphael continued sending messages. He continued to be present. He continued saying, "Good night, Clara," as if praying before going to sleep. But something had changed. Clara responded with fewer words. She took longer to open messages. And when he suggested another meeting, she said she was busy. She said it twice. The third time, he didn't insist. And his silence, the silence of someone who respects but doesn't understand, hurt more than any insistence. Beatrice noticed. "What happened?" she asked at lunch. "Nothing." "Clara." "His house, Bea? Did you see his house?" "No." "It's another reality. It's another planet. I was there with my worn-out sneakers, sitting in a garden that costs more than everything I'll ever earn in my entire life. I'm not from this world." Beatrice looked at her with an expression that mixed tenderness and frustration. "And since when does the world belong to someone, Clara? Since when do we need a passport to like someone?" "You don't understand." "Yes, I understand. You're afraid." "I have reality." "You're afraid that reality will be good." Clara didn't answer, because her friend was right. And when the truth is right, she remained silent. A week passed. Then 2. Clara returned to her routine as one returns home after a short trip. Everything in the same place, everything the same way, but with the feeling that something should be different. The beaded necklace remained around her neck. She didn't take it off, not even in the shower, not even while sleeping, not even on the days she thought she should. The necklace stayed there next to her skin, like a reminder that someone once thought a certain color suited her. One Saturday morning, Clara went to the market. It was the usual market, the small one on the corner of the building, where the owner knew her by name and wrote down her credit in an old notebook. She was choosing tomatoes when the phone rang. It was Donna Irene. "Daughter, I'm in the hospital." The world stopped. Not dramatically. It stopped like a clock. Without warning, without noise, just the hands that no longer move. "What happened, Mom?" "I fell, honey. I fell in the yard. The doctor said I broke my femur. They'll have to operate." Clara leaned against the supermarket shelf and closed her eyes. She felt the weight of all the things she couldn't afford collapsing on her at once. Surgery, hospital, recovery, physical therapy. It all cost money. And she, who already lived on the edge, had no limit to surpass. "I'll figure something out, Mom." "No need to come, daughter. I'm fine." "You're not feeling well. I'll take care of you." She hung up. And there, standing among the tomatoes and onions of a neighborhood market, Clara felt the thing she feared most. The feeling that, no matter how hard she fought, it would never be enough. That the world was made for those who had, and those who didn't merely existed on the margins, hoping the tide wouldn't rise. She spent the following week doing calculations. She called the hospital in Minas Gerais. She researched prices. She asked for quotes. She called the funeral plan, not because her mother was going to die, but because the plan offered a discounted loan for members. She thought about selling her father's watch. She opened the drawer, held the Casio, looked at the hands. She closed the drawer. On Friday, she received a message from Raphael. It simply said, "How are you, Clara?" She stared at the screen for a long time. Then she typed, "I'm fine." Deleted it. Typed, "My mother is in the hospital." Deleted it. Typed, "I'm fine." Sent it. But he replied as if he had read the message she deleted. "I know something's not right. If you need anything, I'm here. No conditions, no expectations, I'm just here." Clara read the message and did something she hadn't done in years. She cried. Not much, not loudly. Just a few tears that trickled down her face as she sat on the bed in the dark, her phone in her hand, and her beaded necklace pressed against her skin. She cried because kindness hurt more than indifference. Because when nobody cares, you get used to it. But when someone cares, the armor cracks, and everything that was contained begins to leak out. The next day, she called Raphael. My mother broke her femur. She needs surgery. I don't have the money. She said it directly, without embellishment, without feigned shame, without beating around the bush. Because Clara didn't know how to ask for help elegantly. She only knew how to ask truthfully. Raphael was silent for 3 seconds. Then he said, "Which hospital?" "Raphael, I'm not asking you for money." "I know. I'm telling you because you asked how I was doing, and I don't want to lie to you anymore." "I know that too. Which hospital?" She gave the name, and listened to him write it down, and felt, at the same time, relief and terror. Because accepting help meant opening up, and opening up meant giving someone the power to hurt. Raphael didn't send money. He called the hospital. He spoke with the doctor. He found a geriatric orthopedic surgeon from Sao Paulo who agreed to travel to Minas Gerais. He paid for everything, the surgery, the hospitalization, the physiotherapy, the post-operative care, without telling Clara the price. When she asked how much it cost, he said, "Less than what Bras spends on snacks per month." It was a lie. She knew it was a lie. But it was a beautiful lie, the kind you tell not to deceive, but to protect. Clara traveled to Minas Gerais. She stayed with her mother for 10 days. She slept in a hospital chair, ate in the cafeteria, and helped with dressing changes. Dona Irene looked at her daughter with that mixture of gratitude and guilt that only mothers who feel like a burden can have. "Who paid for all this, daughter?" "A good person, mother." "Which person?" "Someone I'm still getting to know." Dona Irene held her daughter's hand. "Does this person like you?" Clara thought. She thought about the pastry at the fair, the bookstore, the necklace, the scrambled eggs, the garden, the goodnight message, the call to the hospital, everything Raphael had done without asking for anything in return. "I think so, Mom." And do you like her?" Clara looked out the window of her hospital room. Outside, the sky in Minas Gerais was a blue that Sao Paulo had never seen before. A wide open blue, without buildings to break through it. A blue that seemed like an invitation. "I think so." When she returned to Sao Paulo, Clara did something she had never done before. She went to Raphael's house unannounced. She rang the doorbell. Bras barked from the other side of the door. Raphael opened it looking like he had just woken up from a nap on the sofa, hair tousled, upholstery marks on his face, shirt inside out. "Clara, I want to thank you. You don't need to. I want to, not because you paid for the surgery, but because you treated me like a human being from the very first day. From the moment I showed up at that restaurant dressed like I didn't belong anywhere, you treated me like a human being, and I don't know what to do with this." Raphael leaned against the door framing. He looked at her, and in his eyes Clara saw something she recognized, not because she had seen it before, but because it was the exact reflection of what she felt. Fear. Fear of wanting. Fear that the wanting was too big to fit into life. "Come in," he said. She went inside. They sat on the sofa. Bras lay down between them, and they stayed there in silence, for a time that no clock could measure. It wasn't an awkward silence. It was a silence of recognition. Like when two people who have walked alone for a long time finally stop walking and realize they are in the same place. "Raphael," said Clara, "I need to tell you something." "It says, I have nothing. I live in an apartment that smells of mildew. I cut my own hair. I calculate every penny before buying anything. I don't have a car. I don't have health insurance. I don't have savings. The clothes I'm wearing right now are the best clothes I own. And I know that this doesn't fit with all of this." She made a vague gesture that encompassed the house, the garden, the bookshelf, Raphael's entire world. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he stood up, went to the bookshelf, and took a small cardboard box from behind a row of books. He opened it. Inside was an old yellowed photograph of a thin boy of about 7 years old, sitting in the doorway of an unfinished, unplastered brick house with a mongrel dog beside him. "And that's me," said Raphael. "That was my house, in Itaquera. My father was a bricklayer. My mother sewed for a living. I slept on a mattress on the floor of the room I shared with my two brothers. There was no door, just a curtain. And in the winter we put newspaper inside our clothes to keep warm." Clara looked at the photo. She looked at the boy. She looked at Raphael. "I wasn't born here, Clara. I arrived here. And the journey between there and here didn't make me forget where I came from. It made me feel ashamed sometimes. It made me feel like I didn't belong anywhere. Neither there because I left nor here because I came from there. This blind date? Beatrice doesn't know, but it was me who asked her cousin to introduce me to someone who was real. Someone who didn't know who I am. Someone who would sit in front of me without expectations and look at me as a person, not as property." He placed the photo on the coffee table. Bras sniffed the box. "But you showed up at that restaurant in a faded shirt and sneakers that had seen better days, and you sat there like you owed nothing to anyone. And when I arrived late, you didn't make a scene, You didn't play games. You didn't put on airs. You were just there, completely, and I thought it had been a long time since I'd seen someone so whole. Clara felt her throat tighten. The tears came again, but this time she didn't try to hold them back. She let them flow. And they flowed onto the beaded necklace, onto the thrift store blouse, onto the hands that they counted coins and petted dogs and held mothers in hospitals and never, ever asked anything for themselves. Raphael didn't hug her, not yet. He sat there beside her with the respect of someone who knows that there are moments when presence is more than touch. And he waited. He waited like someone waiting for the rain to pass, not impatiently, but with faith that the sun will come afterward. "I'm scared," said Clara. "Me too? I'm afraid I'll like you and then find out it's not for me. I'm afraid I might like you and not be able to make you believe it." She looked at him. He looked at her. And between the two of them, in the small space of the sofa where Brass snored, something was born that neither of them knew how to name at that moment. It wasn't love yet. It was too early for that word. It was something prior, something like the ground where love can grow if someone has the courage to plant it. The following weeks were different. Clara continued working at the transport company. He continued taking the bus. He continued living his life the same way, because she refused to change for someone else. But Raphael was there, not as a rescue, not as a solution, as a presence. He would pick her up from work sometimes, by car, and her colleagues would look out the window with that curiosity bordering on envy. He would take her to dinner at simple places because he had learned that Clara felt more comfortable in a bakery than in a Michelin-starred restaurant. He would send books by mail to her apartment without a note, without a name, just the book and a handmade bookmark that he made himself by folding paper. And Clara, slowly, like a flower that opens not because the sun commanded it, but because she finally felt she could, began to trust. It wasn't a grand moment. There was no declaration. There was no scene. There was just one night when the two of them were sitting on the floor of Clara's living room, because she insisted that he get to know her world too, without shame, without excuses. And she was reading aloud a passage from a book, and he was listening with his eyes closed, and Braz was sleeping on an old blanket that Clara had spread out for him in the corner. And when she finished reading, she looked at Raphael and realized he was crying. "What was it?" he asked. "Nothing. It's been a long time since someone read to me." And at that moment, Clara understood something that changed everything. She understood that Raphael's money didn't protect him from anything. It didn't protect him from loneliness. It didn't protect him from fear. It didn't protect him from the human need to have someone read to you in a small, imperfect room. That he, despite everything he had, carried within him the same emptiness that she carried. And that, perhaps, the two of them together wouldn't fill that void, but they could, at least, sit beside him without fear. She moved closer. She rested her head on his shoulder. He didn't move. They stayed there, two tired bodies leaning against each other while the city outside made its usual noises. Buses, horns, sirens, life. And inside that small, imperfect apartment, something silent and immense was happening. It wasn't perfect. Nothing was perfect after that. There was the day Clara saw an article on her phone about Raphael's company and discovered that he wasn't just rich. He was a billionaire. The word hit her like a ton of bricks. Not because it changed who he was, but because it amplified the distance she felt. Billionaire. The woman who counted coins at the bakery was falling in love with a billionaire. The irony seemed too great to be true and too cruel to be a joke. There was the night they went to a business event together, their first public event, and Clara wore the same dress from her graduation, the only one she had, taken out of its box after 14 years. The dress still fit, but it was simple, not a fashion, with a patched seam on the shoulder that only she knew was there. The women at the event wore dresses that cost fortunes, hair styled in expensive salons, jewelry that glittered under the chandelier lights. Clara entered arm in arm with Raphael and felt each gaze as a judgment. A woman approached and said with a piercing smile, "Are you Raphael's new girlfriend? How brave." Clara didn't understand the compliment, because it wasn't a compliment. It was poison disguised as politeness. The woman looked at Clara's dress as if it were something that shouldn't be there. And Clara felt with the same painful clarity as always that there were places in the world where she wasn't welcome. Not because he had done anything wrong, but because of who he was. Raphael noticed. He always noticed. He took Clara's hand firmly and led her to the balcony of the hall. Outside, the city shone with lights that they looked like fallen stars. He looked at her and said, "That woman knows nothing about you. And even if she did, she would be ashamed of herself." "She's not wrong," Clara said. "I don't belong in this world." "This world doesn't belong to anyone, Clara. It's rented. People pay money to enter, but what truly keeps someone here is something else." "What?" He didn't answer with words. He took off his jacket and placed it over her shoulders because the night was cold and she didn't have a coat. And that gesture, the heavy, warm jacket over the old dress, said more than any words could. They stayed on the balcony until the event was over. They didn't go back inside. And when they left, Clara took the jacket with her. There was also the day Raphael's past came knocking at his door. His brothers, whom he financially supported but with whom he maintained a distant relationship, showed up at his house one Sunday morning asking for money for a business deal that, according to them, was the opportunity of a lifetime. Raphael refused. There was an argument, shouting, accusations. You got rich and forgot about your family. You think you're better than us? Dad would be ashamed of you. Clara was in the kitchen when she heard everything. She didn't intervene. It wasn't her place. But when her brothers left, and Raphael sat on the garden steps with his face in his hands, she sat beside him and stayed there, in silence. Because sometimes silence is the most honest way of saying, I'm here. I left it to Caro when I was 17, he said, without raising his face. I worked at everything. I cleaned office floors. I made deliveries by motorcycle. I studied at dawn. I won a scholarship. I created the company. And every time I climbed a step, they pulled me by the foot. Not out of malice, out of fear. Because when someone leaves, those who remain feel abandoned. Clara understood, because she too was someone who had stayed. She had stayed in the East Zone, in the job that went nowhere, in the life that fit entirely into a 40-square-meter apartment. And for a long time, he looked at those who were leaving with the same mixture of admiration and resentment that Raphael's brothers felt. You didn't leave anyone behind, she said. You grew up. And growing up isn't about abandonment. He lifted his face. He looked at her. And in that moment, in his eyes, Clara saw something she had never seen anyone feel for her. Gratitude. Not the polite gratitude one expresses after a favor, but the profound gratitude of someone who feels understood. Of someone who, for the first time, doesn't need to explain their own pain. Months passed, and as with everything that is true, the love between them didn't grow in a straight line. It grew in a spiral, returning to old fears, overcoming them, returning again, overcoming them again. Clara had days when she wanted to run away. Days when she looked into the abyss between their lives and thought the fall was inevitable. Days when she almost sent the message that it was all over, because ending things before being left was the only form of control she knew. But he didn't send it. She didn't send it because every time fear gripped her, something small happened. A message from Raphael, a bark from Bras, a book arriving in the mail, a call from Dona Irene saying she had started physiotherapy and could already take 5 steps. A look from Beatrice that said, without words, "You deserve this." And these small signs, added together, were stronger than the fear. There was one night, almost 6 months after their first dinner at the Japanese restaurant, when Clara and Raphael were lying on the sofa in his room. Bras was asleep on the rug, and a movie was playing on the television, neither of them paying attention. Clara's beaded necklace was still around her neck. He reached out and touched the colorful beads with his fingertips. "You never took that necklace off," he said. "Never." "Why?" She thought for a moment. Then she said, "Because it was the first time someone chose a color for me." Raphael remained silent. Then he pulled her closer. And there, in the silence of that room, with the movie playing and the dogs snoring and the city bustling outside, he said the thing they had both known for a long time, but neither had dared to speak. "I love you, Clara." She didn't answer immediately. She let the words settle like leaves on water. She felt their weight, their beauty, their danger. Because being loved, for someone who has never been, is not just joy. It's vertigo. "I love you too," he said, "and that terrifies me." "I know, but I'm here." "I know." And they stayed there. 2 imperfect bodies in an imperfect world choosing to stay. A year after the blind date, Clara was sitting in the garden of Raphael's house, which was now also her house, although it had taken her months to accept the change, and she only accepted on the condition that she could continue working and paying her own bills, when Dona Irene called. "Daughter, I'm walking, really walking, without a cane." Clara smiled. And it was one of those smiles that begins on the lips and ends somewhere inside the chest, in a place she didn't know existed before Raphael, before Bras, before an 8-reel necklace and scrambled eggs in a garden lit by a lamp on a tree branch. "That's great, Mom. And the boy? The one who paid for everything?" "Here she is, Mom, right next to me." "Take care of him, daughter. People who take care of others are rare." "I know, Mom. And let him take care of you, too. You never let anyone else." Clara looked at Raphael, who was sitting at the other end of the deck, working on his laptop with Bras lying at his feet. He felt her gaze. He looked up. He smiled that crooked smile she had learned to love. And she thought, without saying it, that perhaps life wasn't about having or not having, belonging or not belonging. Perhaps it was about finding someone who looks at you wearing the same thrift store blouse and the same graduation dress and the same beaded necklace and sees, not what's missing, but what overflows. Clara didn't become a different person. She continued cutting her own hair. She continued calculating before buying. She continued sending money for his mother. He continued wearing his father's Casio watch, which never returned. But now, when he looked in the mirror, he no longer saw the absence. He saw a woman who had survived invisibility, who had survived judgment, who had survived her own conviction that she didn't deserve it, and that even so, or perhaps because of that, she had been chosen. Not for the money, not for the billionaire, but for the man who was once a boy from Itaquera, who slept on a mattress on the floor and stuffed newspaper inside his clothes to withstand the cold. The man who arrived late at a Japanese restaurant and apologized with his eyes before apologizing with his mouth. The man who bought an 8-reel necklace and said the color suited her. One Sunday afternoon, months later, Clara was reading in the living room when Raphael sat down beside her with a small box. It wasn't a jewelry box. It was a simple cardboard box, similar to the one where he kept his childhood photo. "What is that?" Clara asked. "Open." She opened it. Inside, there was a necklace. Not gold, not diamond. It was a beaded necklace, identical to the first, but with one difference. Among the colorful beads, there was a blue bead, the same color, which, upon closer inspection, was actually a small faceted stone, a tiny sapphire, hidden among plastic beads. "That's you, Clara," he said. "You are the sapphire among the beads, and I was lucky enough to get a close look." Clara held the necklace. She felt the weight. Almost the same weight as before. Almost nothing. But now, that almost nothing meant everything. She placed the new necklace next to the old one, 2 necklaces around her neck, one worth 8 rays, the other worth a disguised fortune. And she thought that perhaps, if only love worked like that, not as something that replaces who we were before, but as something that gently steps aside and says, "You were always enough." That night, Clara stayed awake after Raphael fell asleep. She looked at the ceiling, not the ceiling of the old apartment, but another ceiling in another place. But the sounds were the same. There was a dog snoring. There was the engine of a bus on the distant avenue. There was the silence between things. And Clara, for the first time in her life, heard this silence not as absence, but as fullness. She closed her eyes. She touched the necklaces around her neck, and she slept like someone who has finally arrived home. Outside, the city continued. The São Paulo sky remained gray. The buses remained crowded. People continued counting coins, cutting hair in bathroom mirrors, eating dinner alone in small kitchens. Life continued as it was, difficult, unfair, and strangely beautiful. But somewhere in the city, in a house with a garden and a tree and a dog named Brás, a woman who had dressed carelessly for a blind date slept with 2 necklaces around her neck and a smile that didn't need a mirror to exist. And that, in some way, was enough. That was all.